it's me, Vicky Bunny, r/Nuclearrevenge, where we will read the time my dad aided in committing a murder. Warning! Graphic content described. Read at your own discretion. This has recently come to my attention through a family gathering, but it happened over 20 years ago. I live in good old sunny Portugal in the Algarve, to be more precise, and in the summer's time we do what we do best, which is spend entire days at the beach with our families. At the time I was 16 and my brother was 4, and we had a friendly neighbor family which was basically our second family, and they had 2 daughters aged 12 and 6, Maria and Rita, not real names obviously. Now, we basically spend every single waking moment together since we literally live a few meters from each other, and our parents were pretty much inseparable and would spend their own time together since my dad was a fisherman, still is, and the girl's dad was also fisherman. Our mothers would do what mothers do together and cook, gossip, and whatnot. I was only 1 year old when we moved to the neighborhood, and a few days later, the other family moved in, and since we were literally the very first people to move to that neighborhood, it was a brand spanking new community, still with half the brand new houses for sale. My parents befriended them very quickly. 4 years later, their first daughter was born, and I suddenly had a very loud and very active play friend as she grew up. Despite our age difference, we actually got along just fine, and over the years, we grew closer and closer with our siblings being born. We were as brother and sister as they come. Like I said before, summer days were spent in the beach, and this is where it all began. One day mid-afternoon, we were all the beach playing as usual when came to us and asked us if we had seen Rita, since she was nowhere to be found. We said we hadn't seen her, and the last time we saw her, she was playing with some children right next to our towel spot. Her dad was frantically looking at her, and my dad was looking worried too. The next hour was spent looking for Rita. While Maria was already crying because her sister was missing, my heart was pounding because this had never happened before, and they were both like my sisters. Finally, after almost 90 minutes searching, she had made her way towards us and said she was playing with a few kids behind some rocks in the distance. This particular beach we were at was amazing, and at high tide, it was a swim paradise, but at low tide, all the huge rocks and boulders formed by the tides were visible and were awesome for some hide-and-seek opportunities. No second thought was given, and we all went home. Later that night, Rita's dad came to our home in tears and extremely furious. Turns out, Rita had been sexually assaulted by someone at the beach and was threatened with death if she was ever to tell anyone. Rita's mom found out when she was giving her bath and discovered her bodysuit. She wore one of these because her skin is a bit sensitive to the sun, had a cut in the crotch area big enough to reveal her privates, and there was blood all over it. She was immediately rushed to the hospital where the suspicions were confirmed that she was indeed assaulted. Even her dad was made a suspect after talking to the police, but was released after his wife's testimony. He was furious. There was someone at the beach we go to for years that has been snatching and raping little girls. After he talked to the police, they said there was nothing they could do since there was no DNA or evidence. Apparently, the sick F used a condom, and that the best they could do was send out a patrol to the beach, but the presence of uniformed officers would scare away the rapist. Days had passed, and the behavior of Rita changed immensely as she started avoiding me and any other boys in the neighborhood. She would get extremely scared around adults, even to the point of peeing herself and crying uncontrollably. I didn't understand what was happening because during this whole ordeal, I was completely oblivious to what had happened to her. I only found 20 years later. I knew something was wrong since I had overheard both our moms crying over it, but I didn't know what it was. So both our dads started plotting revenge and to end that pervert's reign of terror. One night, as they were talking to each other about what they could do about it, Maria had sneaked out of her room and overheard everything. She approached him and said, "Is this about the man that hurt Rita? I can help." They both stared at her and told her to go to bed and forget what she heard. Maria insisted and said that she wanted the man that hurt her sister to just disappear. The next weekend, 3 of them went to the beach without the knowledge of the rest of us and started exacting the revenge. Maria acted as bait, and despite being 11, she was barely any taller than Rita, so she could pass as a 6 or 7-year-old as she played near the rocks. It was low tide. Both our dads watched her from afar like hawks. Sure enough, 15 minutes later, there was someone beckoning at her from behind a rock, and as scared she was, she approached the person. Our dads saw this and ran towards her. What they saw sent shivers down their spines. In the short amount of time it took them to get there, Maria was already gagged and her bikini bottoms were down her ankles, and the pervert was ready to. He had a knife in his hand, which both our dads promptly took from him. They said he tried to make some excuses about how he found her like that and he was going to help her, but those were literally his last words. Over the course of what they said felt like hours but was less than 5 minutes, they proceeded to beat the shiz out of him, gagged him, stabbed him in his junk, bashed his head against the rocks over and over and over again until he was still. Then Rita's dad dealt the last blow and stabbed him in the throat, leaving him there as he gurgled his last breath. They left the beach and Maria was shaking. Having almost experienced an assault like her sister, she started sobbing and crying in the car, but her dad managed to calm her down and assured her that her sister had been avenged. She didn't understand what had happened, but she was calm when they got home. She was made to promise never to tell a soul, and this was their secret until now. 2 days later, the news of the body of a known sex offender that had been on the run was discovered next to the beach in Spain, and there were no suspects since he was badly decomposed. Apparently, the high tide came soon after and took him away, which was a blessing to our dads. Rita still has nightmares to this day, but has had the fortune of marrying a wonderful man that helps and supports her, and Maria carried the secret up to this day when she shared the story along with our dads. We were shocked and my mom was furious at my dad because he could have been arrested and our family torn apart. Rita's mom started crying and begged her husband to tell her he was lying and that she couldn't believe her husband was a murderer. Maria intervened and said she was as much an accomplice as our dads. Rita was not present as she was in the hospital delivering her first baby, and we all agreed never to tell her anything. Comments. That's kinda what happened to sex offenders in the words of a very wise man. That ain't no crime, that's justice. Tiso says, is it murder or is it justifiable defense at what the 2 fathers had witnessed? Be careful what you say. There's no time limit on certain crimes. It wouldn't take long for authorities to piece together who those 2 men were. Just use caution. Broken says, well, it's been 20 years and despite me just finding this out, nothing has come of it. Tison replies, I believe from a legal point of view, there is no time limit on murder using your description. Unsolved cases can be reopened if new evidence is discovered from the information you've given. It wouldn't take the police to work out the identities involved. You said murder implying premeditated as opposed to seeing who it was to get an ID to give police and seeing what was about to happen to his daughter. Your neighbor and your dad went to her defense. The confrontation led to the man dying. Haifa says, of course it was murder. It was a premeditated killing. I'd have done exactly the same that in the dad's position. The bastard deserved it. Not really murder, just divine intervention. So Tracy responds, morally, probably not. The pedo got what he deserved and that's that. Legally, however, OP should be very careful about how she phrases the story. This post is effectively a testimony to a premeditated murder. Without it, assuming they were to get caught, the 2 dads could claim they caught the pedo mid-assault and beat him to death. There would be little to no illegal repercussions for that, and while it's still probably illegal, you'd be pretty unlucky if you got convicted of anything. But how the story is told here, the truth is very much illegal. This is premeditated murder, 100%. A good lawyer might be able to argue it down to 3rd-degree murder or even manslaughter since it's a crime of passion, but the dad still would certainly face a couple of years jail time minimum. The daughter too possibly, although that's a much easier case to argue since she was too young to understand the implications at the time. Great revenge story, and I'm happy the a-hole got what he deserves. I'm just saying posting an account of what happened on the internet is pretty risky because it gets rid of it and any deniability you had. Granted, I doubt anyone is looking for this piece of shiz killer, but better safe than sorry. Okay everyone, thank you all for watching my video. Subscribe to read more Reddit posts with me and see you guys in the next one!